Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Friday, December the 18th, 2020. That was Representative Maxine Waters exactly 1 year ago today, on Wednesday, December the 18th, 2019. 1 week before Christmas of that year, the U.S. House of Representatives impeached Donald J. Trump on 2 articles of impeachment. 1 year later, 1 week before Christmas 2020, a look back at what happened on that House floor a year ago and a week before Christmas 2019. A lot has happened and changed since then. And we're now 33 days away from the end of Donald Trump in the White House. A look back at some of the floor speeches, or rather a listen back to some of those speeches, and more, coming up next.
On this vote, the yeas are 230, the nays are 197, present is 1. Article 1 is adopted. On this vote, the yeas are 229, the nays are 198, present is 1. Article 2 is adopted.
Audio from both of the roll call announcement vote tallies for both articles of impeachment exactly 1 year ago today. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, read out both of the results of the vote, the final vote, in the U.S. House of Representatives on both articles of impeachment for Donald J. Trump. It was the third time that someone in the White House had been impeached. Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and Donald J. Trump. That happened 1 year ago today on the U.S. House of Representatives floor in Congress. And my, how much has changed. What a difference a year makes. And look where we are. A pandemic has come and is still with us, getting worse. Over 300,000 people have died from coronavirus due to Donald Trump's deliberate non-action. We have an economic depression, the second Republican Great Depression. We have people out of work at record numbers. Over 30 million jobs lost this calendar year. Rising levels of unemployment. Rising evictions and foreclosures on homes. Healthcare in the balance, a woman's right to choose in the balance. A rogue Republican Party, a fascist party that rammed through a Supreme Court justice. And Donald Trump and the Republicans in a coup attempt just a few weeks ago. In fact, right up until the last few days. All of that and a lot more has transpired in the exactly 1 year since Donald J. Trump was impeached. There's no doubt that the House of Representatives, the Democratic House, did the right thing. This vote in both articles of impeachment was a vote that was along party lines, with one Democrat voting present, that was Representative Tulsi Gabbard, who was in the midst of a run for president last year. Justin Amash, the independent, was also exploring a run for president, it turned out, but he voted for impeachment. It turned out that within 2 months of that vote last year, the United States Senate, led by the Republican Party in the Senate, would acquit Donald J. Trump of these 2 impeachment charges in what was known as the sham trial in the Senate. No witnesses called for the first time in a trial in United States history. Mitch McConnell was presiding over that ship. And when all was said and done, only one Republican, and for the first time ever, chose to vote against his party by voting to convict Donald J. Trump of abuse of power. It's incredible what has happened. And I do think that it is worth going back and explaining how we got to where we got to on December the 18th, 2019. During the summer of that year, specifically July the 25th, Donald J. Trump made at least 2 phone calls to Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky, leaning on him to open up an investigation on Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden, and wanting Zelensky to announce that he was going to hold a press conference regarding investigations of the Bidens. All of this was done, at least discussed, with a promise from Donald Trump of providing the financial and military aid that Ukraine so desperately needed in its continuing fight and war against Russia, a country that Donald Trump really admires, particularly its president, Vladimir Putin, its dictator for life, essentially. That's what the impeachment was centered around in the House. Some of the people that you are going to hear speak were very much against the idea of impeachment. For example, Representative Adam Schiff, who would soon have a starring role within 2 months of this impeachment, would have a starring role in the House Managers Impeachment Trial Council as the leading counselor, was initially dead set against impeachment of Donald Trump. But as you will hear in just a few minutes, he spoke as if he was supporting impeachment all along. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi was against impeachment initially. Many people were very upset with her and other House Democrats for not getting involved in trying to make impeachment actually happen a lot earlier than it eventually did. There were many of us who thought that impeachment should have begun literally in the first month or so of 2017 when Donald Trump walked into the White House. It was so obvious that there were blatant emoluments clause violations. So many of them. When Donald Trump failed to divest from his businesses, failed to release his tax returns, and failed to be honest at all, at any way, shape, or form. with the American people, lying over 25,000 times. The moral of the story is that if Donald Trump's lips are moving, it means that he is lying. What you are about to hear, interspersed with breaks and commentary from yours truly, are some of the more and indeed most important speeches made exactly 1 year ago today on Wednesday, December the 18th, 2019. 1 week before Christmas. An early Christmas present for the country. Here is the first speaker, and I think you will recognize his voice.
When we came to Washington in 1961 to go on the Freedom Rise, we chose that day. When we came here on August 28, 1963, for the March on Washington, it was joyful. We met with a young president, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. When we came here on August 6, 1965, for the signing of the Voting Rights Act, we were excited, hopeful. We met with President Lyndon Johnson, but today, this day, we didn't ask for this. This is a sad day. It is not a day of joy. Our nation is founded on the principle that we do not have kings, we have presidents. And the Constitution is our compasses. When you see something that is not right, not just, not fair, you have a moral obligation to say something, to do something. Our children and their children will ask us, what did you do? What did you say? For some, this vote may be hard, but we have a mission and a mandate to be on the right side of history. I'll yield back to Banners of my time.
Just under 8 months after that speech, John Lewis would pass away. He passed away in July of this year, 2020. Lewis will be sorely missed. He truly is an American hero, a patriot, someone who died for what he believed in, and somebody who blazed a trail for all of us. And he would indeed play an integral part, both presently and posthumously, in the election of Joseph Biden. And that's what John Lewis did, among many other things, was a very important figure in this country's history. And that speech was one of the last speeches that he gave on the House floor. The next speaker that you're going to hear from is Pramila Jayapal, the Congresswoman from Seattle, Washington. One of the progressives. She really is someone who has made a big difference in the House. Here now is Representative Pramila Jayapal.
Mr. Speaker, this is a day of accountability and defending our democracy. The facts in front of us are clear. This president, Donald J. Trump, coerced a fragile foreign ally to investigate his political opponent and interfere in our elections. And he leveraged critically needed, congressionally approved military aid to Ukraine. The president's allies want to claim that he did this because he cared about corruption. But if President Trump truly cared about corruption, then he would have listened to the talking points that were prepared by the National Security Council on anti-corruption. He did not. In fact, on those two calls with President Zelensky, he never mentioned the word corruption. He did not abide by the Department of Defense's own recommendation that Ukraine had passed all the anti-corruption benchmarks, and he didn't listen to the unanimous conclusion of all of his top advisors that he must release that aid to Ukraine. He did release the aid in 2017 and 2018, but not in 2019. Why? Because in 2019, Vice President Joe Biden was running for president. Because this is not hearsay. We have a responsibility. The president told us himself on national television exactly what he wanted from the phone call with President Zelensky. He came onto the White House lawn and he said, I wanted President Zelensky to open an investigation into the Bidens. He solicited foreign interference before. He is doing it now, and he will do it again. The president is the smoking gun. Our founders, Mr. Speaker, entrusted us with the awesome responsibility of protecting our democracy, which gets its power not from the bloodlines of monarchs, but from the votes of we the people. Without that, we are no longer a democracy, we are a monarchy or a dictatorship. And so today, to uphold my oath to Constitution and country, I will vote to impeach Donald J. Trump. I yield back.
For all the things that people say about the House Democrats, one thing you cannot say is that they did not take this impeachment seriously. They certainly did. And although the House of Representatives and most of the Senate in general have not done enough to get a stimulus package passed, and they are still working on the $908 billion bill, you can say that the House was much more vigorous about looking at this impeachment because it was so obvious. There were any number of things to, as I said earlier, impeach Donald Trump on. So many different things. And to think that there was an attempted coup in this country carried out by he and the Republican Party. It only goes to show you that we are in some real dire straits in this country if we do not stand up and fight back. It's incredible how time flies, that it's been exactly 1 year now that impeachment took place. I remember exactly where I was. I remember what time it was. It was almost 5:45 Pacific time in the evening when those articles of impeachment were confirmed through a final vote as read out by the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. And what you may have heard, but you couldn't see, was a cheer breaking out on the House floor. And Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, cutting her eyes at the person who was cheering and screaming. She put out her hand very, very abruptly as if to say, stop, enough of that. And she banged the gavel. She was not wanting to be gleeful about what had just happened on the floor. And as you heard in Congressman John Lewis's speech, he was lamenting how sad a day it was, not a day to rejoice. That is the kind of person that John Lewis was. Now, if that was me, I would be laughing. And I'd be dancing with delight. This is Representative Ted Lieu of California.
Thank you, Chairman Nadler, for your leadership. Let's start by making this very simple. No one in America could do what Donald Trump did and get away with it. No American elected official can call up a foreign government and ask for an investigation of a political opponent. No member of Congress can call up a foreign official and ask for help in our re-election campaign. If we did that, we would likely get indicted. No one is above the law, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. I first swore an oath to the Constitution when I joined the United States Air Force on active duty. And the oath I took was not to a political party or to a president or to a king. It was a document that has made America the greatest nation on earth. And that document contains a safeguard for when the president's abuse of power is so extreme that it warrants impeachment. We're not here because of policy disputes. While I disagree with the president, I acknowledge he has a right to restrict the number of refugees entering our country. He has a right to eliminate environmental executive orders. He has a right to sign a bill that has given tax breaks to the wealthy. But the president does not have the right to cheat and to solicit foreign interference in our elections. That is illegal. It is not what the voters elected him to do, and we will not stand for it. The president's actions in this case were particularly insidious because he also used our government for his private gain. He conditioned taxpayer-funded military aid and a critical White House meeting with the Ukrainian president on the requirement that Ukraine publicly announce an investigation into his opponent. And by harming Ukrainian national security, the president also harmed U.S. national security. And then the president solicited foreign interference again on the south lawn of the White House when he again asked Ukraine to investigate his political opponent. And then he asked China, our peer competitor, to do the same. That abuse of power is not acceptable. Whether or not the Senate convicts, the House has an independent duty to do the right thing. That's why we have passed over 275 bipartisan bills that are stuck in the Senate. Whether impeaching or legislating, we will continue to be faithful to the Constitution regardless of what the Senate may or may not do. Moreover, impeachment is a form of deterrence. Our children are watching. No president ever wants to be impeached. And whether Donald Trump leaves in 1 month, 1 year, or 5 years, this impeachment is permanent. It will follow him around for the rest of his life, and history books will record it. And the people will know why we impeached. It's all very simple. No one's above the law, not our commander-in-chief, not our president. I yield back.
Congressman Liu points out that no one would be able to get away with what Donald Trump got away with, and it's very true. Very true indeed. Congressman Liu has been someone who had been aggressive, particularly in 2019, about the idea of impeachment, although I don't think necessarily was very clearly for it. But in 2019, he certainly learned to be. It is very easy to forget that Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, and Adam Schiff were really very much against impeachment, as I mentioned earlier. It was Representative Al Green of Texas who, within the first few weeks of 2017, drew up an impeachment resolution, which was roundly rejected by a vast majority of House members, many of them Democrats. A year ago today, it was Al Green who had the last laugh. Welcome back. So, Al Green indeed had the last laugh. And no matter what Donald Trump does 33 days from now when he is leaving and is ousted from the White House, he will always have an asterisk next to his name. Impeached. And impeached in his first term. Within 3 years in the White House, he was impeached. It goes to show you who and what he is. Many of those people in Congress knew exactly what they were getting with Donald Trump. In fact, I would say nearly all of them did. And when you bring a criminal into politics, that's exactly what you're going to get. A criminal. That is a lesson that not only politicians should learn, but voters should also learn. When you play with fire, you get burned. The next speaker you're going to be hearing from is none other than Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas.
I hate no woman or man. Today, the American people should receive clarity and truth. The Constitution is the highest law of the land. The President breached and violated the Constitution of the United States of America. The President committed constitutional crimes. The President's crimes are impeachable. John F. Kennedy said, if this country should ever reach the point where any man or group of men by force or threat of force could defy the commands of our court and Constitution, then no law would stand free from doubt and no citizen would be safe from his neighbors. The facts are undisputed. First, President Trump violated his oath of office by placing his personal political interests above the national interest by scheming to coerce Ukraine into investigating a potential election opponent. Second, President Trump betrayed the nation by interest by withholding the congressionally agreed $391 million to a fragile ally against a very strong foe, Russia. Third, the essential purpose of the scheme concocted by the president was to enlist a foreign country to help in the 2020 election. These acts are constitutional crimes and abuse of power. The truth is, the president did ask for a favor. Those were his own words. In the July 25th call, no mention of corruption, only the mention of the Bidens. The president was engaged in wrongdoing and is a clear and present danger. He has a pattern, and his behavior remains a continuing threat to America's national security. The truth is that abuse of power does violate the Constitution while both corrupting and cheating our American democracy. His acts betrayed the nation. He must take care to execute laws faithfully. This is the truth. Why does the truth matter? Because it matters to the farmer at his or her plow. It matters to the waitress on an early morning shift. It matters to the steel worker building America. It matters to the teacher in a fifth grade class. It matters to a mother kissing off her military recruit going off to war. The Constitution must be preserved. Our laws must be honored and respected. The bloodshed and sacrifice of fellow Americans cannot be ignored, trampled on, or rejected. And today, our actions on the vote taken today must be for no personal gain or grandeur. The bright light of this constitutional democracy has been dimmed because of his acts. The truth is no longer for all. It is for one man, Donald J. Trump, his truth, his way. We must reject that abuse of power because this is not America. No one is above the law. Alexander Hamilton said impeachment was designed to deal with the misconduct of public men and violation of public trust. The president has violated the trust. We must impeach Donald J. Trump.
Look, thousands of Americans are dying a day. Our lives have been turned upside down, and they're doing nothing in Washington. David Perdue had his chance, but he was too busy looking after his stock portfolio. And now he's blocking relief for the rest of us. We can defeat this virus by listening to doctors and scientists. We can pass direct economic relief. We can get our daily lives back, but only if we vote. I'm John Ossoff, and I approve this message.
Welcome back. Adam Schiff of California, as I said earlier, is a congressman who was hesitant at best to impeach Donald Trump. Literally, back in 2017 and as recently as early 2019. Representative Adam Schiff really was not interested in any kind of impeachment of Donald Trump. So what changed? Well, the Ukraine situation was a factor for sure. Public pressure was a factor. I'm sure his constituents were a factor as well. and the idea that this had everything to do with Joe Biden in terms of him running for office. Remember, 2019 was the same year that Joe Biden announced his presidential run. He announced back in April of last year, and at the time there had not been a phone call made, but it was very clear that Donald Trump knew that Joe Biden posed a significant threat, or at least he thought so, to Trump's prospects of staying in power in the White House. And so the plotting and the planning began. Adam Schiff, as you know, has gone on to be one of the House impeachment managers in the impeachment sham trial that Mitch McConnell held in the Senate earlier this year, in late January through early February. This was also around the time that coronavirus had started to percolate in various areas of China, and we had not yet known in February that it was here until we got toward the end of February and we started to find out about what was going on at the Kirkland, Washington nursing home in Washington State. And it was also around this same time that two Republican senators, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, were getting briefings, confidential briefings for the House and Senate around coronavirus. And based on and in reliance of those briefings, both of these Republicans who are up for re-election in a runoff, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, traded stock based on news that they were receiving in their briefings that they are not supposed to be trading on because that's insider trading. And no, there was not any kind of indication that there was going to be any chicanery or any tampering. But the fact of the matter is that this was not above board. It was not above board. And you could say that they did tamper with this briefing because what they did was, in reliance on it, they used information that was private to them and to their colleagues, and they tampered with the markets by playing the markets and selling or buying stock based on private information. That's what insider trading is. And now both of them are running in the runoffs in Georgia. Two dishonest, disgusting people. Vote Ossoff and Warnock in Georgia, please. Please, make John Lewis proud. The late, great John Lewis. You're now going to hear from Adam Schiff himself for a few minutes. He spoke for about 12 or 13 minutes on Wednesday, December the 18th, 2019. I'm going to play you just a small excerpt of that time.
Or the impact on our national security caused by withholding military aid to that country fighting for its democratic life. All that matters to this president is what affects him personally, an investigation into his political rival and a chance to cheat in the next election. As Professor Gerhardt testified before the Judiciary Committee 2 weeks ago, if what we're talking about is not impeachable, then nothing is impeachable. Even as this body uncovered the facts of this Ukraine scheme, even as we opened an impeachment inquiry, even as we gathered evidence, President Trump continued his efforts to seek foreign help in the next election. Well, I would think, he said from the White House lawn on October 3rd, that if they're being honest about it, they'd start a major investigation into the Bidens. It's a very simple answer, he said. And he made it clear it's an open invitation to other nations as well, saying China should start an investigation into the Bidens Two, President Trump sent his chief of staff to the White House podium, and he told the world that, of course, they had linked aid to investigations and that we should just get over it. And even as these articles have made their way to this House floor, the president's personal attorney has continued pursuing these sham investigations on behalf of his client, the president. The president and his men plot on. The danger persists. The risk is real. Our democracy is at peril. But we are not without a remedy prescribed by the founders for just these circumstances: impeachment. The only question is, will we use it? Or have we fallen prey to another evil that the founders forewarned? The excess of factionalism, the elevation of party over country. Many of my colleagues appear to have made their choice to protect the president, to enable him to be above the law, to empower this president to cheat again, as long as it is in the service of their party and their power. They've made their choice, despite this president and the White House stonewalling every subpoena, every request for witnesses and testimony from this co-equal branch of government. They have made their choice, knowing that to allow this president to obstruct Congress will empower him and any other president that follows to be as corrupt, as negligent, or as abusive of the power of the presidency as they choose. They have made their choice, and I believe they will rue the day that they did. When Donald J. Trump was sworn in on January 20th, 2017, he repeated these words: "I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States." Has he lived up to that sacred obligation? Has he honored his oath of office? Has he preserved, protected, and defended the Constitution of the United States? The uncontested evidence provides the simple yet tragic answer: he has not. In America, no one is above the law. Donald J. Trump sacrificed our national security in an effort to cheat in the next election. And for that, and his continued efforts to seek foreign interference in our elections, he must be impeached. I reserve the balance of my time.
The last speech of all might be actually the favorite speech of mine. Of all the speeches that I have played on this edition of the Politicrat Daily Podcast, this speech was the one I really enjoyed listening to. There were many, many other speeches during the 12 hours of debate on the House floor, exactly 1 year ago today, exactly 1 week before Christmas. But this speech by Representative Maxine Waters is my favorite speech. Here is the Congresswoman affectionately known as Auntie Maxine. Exactly 1 year ago today, Wednesday, December the 18th, 2019.
Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, the rules of debate won't allow me to cite all of the reasons why this president should be impeached. There are many. However, Madam Speaker and members of this House, to quote the late Maya Angelou, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. This day was not inevitable, but it was predictable because this president has shown himself time and time again to believe that he is above the law. And he has no respect for our Constitution or our democracy. Based on all that we know about Donald Trump, we could have predicted he would have abused the power of the president by corruptly soliciting the government of Ukraine and the Ukrainian President Zelensky to publicly announce investigations into his political opponent, former Vice President Joseph R. Biden. This impeachment resolution includes evidence that this president withheld $391 million of taxpayer funds that Congress appropriated for the purpose of providing vital military and security assistance to Ukraine to oppose Russian aggression. Another blatant abuse of power. Our investigations revealed that this president advanced a discredited theory promoted by Russia, alleging that Ukraine, rather than Russia, interfered in the 2016 United States presidential election for corrupt purposes in pursuit of personal political benefit. Never before in our history have we experienced a president who has so clearly conducted himself in a manner offensive to and subversive of the Constitution and directed his cabinet members, executive branch agencies, and other White House officials to defy lawful subpoenas from Congress. Was he attempting to hide wrongdoing? It is without question that this president has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to national security and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-governance and the rule of law, because at every turn he has shown us who he is. It is no secret that this president could have been impeached a long time ago. Today, we stand here with an irrefutable case and an indisputable set of facts that this president absolutely abused his power and obstructed Congress. Any other individual who would have been caught conducting themselves in the way this president has would have been prosecuted to the full extent of the law. It is shameful that any members of this House are willing to disregard the Constitution, turn a blind eye to hard facts, and ignore a confession from the president himself. History will remember those who were willing to speak truth to power. Yes, I called for Trump's impeachment early. This is our country. Our foremothers and our forefathers shed their blood to build and defend this democracy. I refuse to have it undermined. I wholeheartedly support this resolution. I'm proud that in the final analysis, justice will have been served in America and Donald Trump will have been impeached.
That was the irrepressible Congresswoman Maxine Waters, telling it like it is. I cannot tell you how great it is to listen to her. She is an absolute marvel. She's somebody that I really do admire and respect. Congresswoman Waters always gets to the heart of the matter. And by the way, she was one of the earliest people, by contrast to her fellow California colleague Adam Schiff. She was one of the earliest people in Congress to call for impeachment. In fact, she may have called for it before Al Green did. Al Green may have introduced the resolution for impeachment, which most Democrats scoffed at the time in 2017. But it was Congresswoman Maxine Waters who was way out front with impeachment. I mean, both she and Al Green were out there early in 2017. In fact, if you go to Maxine Waters' Twitter page, @Rep Maxine Waters, you will see a pinned tweet of this diagram of what she calls the Kremlin clan. And she names it and claims it. It was dated in 2017, pretty early on that year, while Donald Trump was just getting used to walking around in the White House. It's remarkable that Representative Waters saw this coming pretty darn early, and the rare few included with her who did. But what I can say now is that I am thankful that this impeachment took place, and quite frankly, it wouldn't have been possible without you, the American voter. First of all, you had to vote in a majority Democratic House to make it happen. Because as you saw, the previous 2 years, from 2017 and 2018, the Republicans controlled the House. And if you remember, as I do, they did nothing whatsoever to curb the abuses and the corruption and the criminality of Donald J. Trump, while those Republicans held control of the U.S. House. Devin Nunes was playing the fool. All of these people who are now in the minority were getting up on their high horse in 2017 and in 2018, talking all the nonsense they could talk and all the lies that they could spew. We do have to pat ourselves on the back here, for if it was not for our relentless endeavor and our pressure and our activism and our communication and our determination, Donald J. Trump would not have been impeached. He may run around and pretend that he was not impeached. He may run around and pretend that he somehow won this election. But he knows that he did not win this election. He got steamrolled and landslided. And this is also what Wolf Blitzer knows.
After 4 long, tense days, we've reached a historic moment in this election. We can now project the winner of the presidential race. CNN projects Joseph R. Biden Jr. is elected the 46th president of the United States, winning the White House and denying President Trump a second term. We're able to make this projection because CNN projects Biden wins Pennsylvania, the former vice president, in his 3rd run for the highest office, pulling off a rare defeat of a sitting commander-in-chief. With this victory, Kamala Harris is set to become the first woman and the first person of color to be the vice president. Again, CNN projects Joe Biden will become the 46th president of the United States. And Jake, he is now President-elect Joe Biden.
Maybe that audio from Wolf Blitzer was the best sound of all. And how sweet it was. How sweet it was. 5.5 weeks ago. And what's more, we are now just 1 week from Christmas 2020. And just 33 days away from the end of Donald Trump in the White House. And thanks to you, the voter, you got rid of him. And I'm so glad that we did that together. Over 81.2 million of us. It is always good to take a trip down memory lane. History is important. And so was this moment exactly 1 year ago today. And so the moment will be 33 days from now, on Wednesday, January the 20th. 2021, when history beckons and a country begins to move in the direction that it should move in, a positive one. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.